Welcome to Growing Belleville Through Community Chats, a podcast presented by the Greater Belleville Chamber of Commerce to help highlight, promote, and enlighten people, businesses, and community events in the Greater Belleville area. Here are your hosts, Stephen Sedlak and Eric Huber.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Growing Belleville Through Community Chats. I am your co-host along with the incomparable Mr. Eric Huber. How are we, Eric?
I'm doing all right for a Monday, long weekend, but got to get back up and get back to work and put in a full 5 days, I guess, this week.
You're having a better Monday than me so far. We'll leave it at that. So our guest today is Amy Richter of Hospice of Southern Illinois and I'm sorry, Amy, you were the past, was it the president or was it the board of the chair or chair of the board?
This year, past chair.
Past chair of the Greater Belleville Chamber of Commerce. How are you, Amy?
I'm good. How are you both?
Wonderful. It's, I've had better Mondays, like I said, but the weather's nice, so I can't complain too much. Amy, why don't you kind of just give everybody, like I said before, we hopped on like a quick 10,000, foot overview of kind of yourself, your background, and how you kind of got to where you are.
Okay. Well, I am a Belleville native, so I spent most of my life in Belleville. I went to Belleville West High School. I received an undergraduate degree from SIU Edwardsville in professional accounting. And then I went to work in St. Louis for a regional CPA firm as an auditor, and I stayed there for about 5 years. And while I was there, I received my CPA license. And then I went to work for one of my clients downtown St. Louis. So I was a financial analyst for about 4 years. And then I decided that I wanted to get into healthcare. And so I went to work for a large nonprofit Catholic healthcare system based out of St. Louis. And I spent about 17 years there, got my MBA while I was working there. So I started out as a senior accountant and moved up to an accounting manager, accounting director, and then my position when I left there was corporate director of financial and regulatory reporting. So did a lot of this financials, cost reports, tax work, things such as that. And then I received a phone call from my former boss at the healthcare system, and she had retired, and she told me that she had gotten a call about a position in Belleville for Hospice of Southern Illinois as a CFO, and she was retired already, so she thought I might be interested, which I was. And so I came over, interviewed. It was great to interview here because I grew up in Belleville, so it was wonderful to come back to Illinois. So I did get the position and worked as the CFO for our organization for 7 years. And then our CEO retired and I moved into the CEO role. So I've been in that role since 2017.
Is that a role you ever thought you'd end up at? Or did you always kind of think you'd be in the more of the financial side?
No, when you go into finance, that's my forte. I really had no thoughts of even being a CEO. I thought, well, I'll retire as a CFO, but this opportunity came up and a lot of the work I had been doing, I had been working really closely with the CEO and a lot of the duties, I had taken on some additional duties and it was just a completely different role for me. It was more community-based. I got to go out in the community, out of my office. I spent most of my time as the CFO in my office, and so it was really nice to get out in the community and meet people.
I guess, does that kind of then parlay into you a big part of why you got involved with the chamber and eventually became chairperson and now, of course, past chairperson?
It is. The CEO that I reported to when I was hired, she suggested that I get into Leadership Belleville. And even though I had progressed in my role, she thought it was a good idea to get back into networking in the community a little bit more. I'd kind of gotten away from that somewhat. So I went through the Leadership Belleville program, and then I did apply for a position on the chamber board. So I did serve 3 years on the chamber board, then on the government affairs committee. And I chose that committee because that was probably maybe one of my weaker areas. And I thought I'd learn more about local and state government that way. And it just would be a good learning opportunity for me. So I served as a member on that committee. And then eventually I chaired that committee. And then after that, I briefly went off the board. I also was involved in a lot of volunteer work over in the greater St. Louis area. So I was president of the Healthcare Financial Management Association Greater St. Louis chapter, and then past president. So that took some of my time also. And then eventually I got a call from Wendy because they had a treasurer's position open on the executive committee for the Belleville Chamber because their treasurer had moved out of state. Mm-hmm. And so I came in and I fulfilled his role for his remaining term. And then I also have now served, it'll be another 5 years. I have one more year after my past president's role this time. So I came on executive committee, and that's a rotation on that committee where you move eventually into the chairperson's role.
You know, I kind of did the same path. I did do the leadership Belleville, and I've told people before, I thought it was phenomenal class to take. There's actually stuff, I grew up in Belleville, lived here most of my life, and there's stuff that I learned, in that class that I didn't even know about, and there's places I visited that I never visited in my time here. But I agree. I think if anybody's looking to get involved with the chamber and become a little more involved, a little more integrated, I guess, and familiar with people networking wise, I always say that's a good place to start because you're starting to build connections with people, in a classroom level, I guess, if you will. They kind of have the same mentality that you have. So I agree. I think it's a phenomenal thing, and it's a good place to start. And I don't know if I'll go to the on the executive committee. I don't know if my path will be the same as yours. I don't know if that's where I want to go, but kudos for you for stepping up and for filling that spot when it came available.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Leadership Belleville was really valuable to me. Again, in my career-wise, it was building those connections with other people. And even to this day, I still am friends with some of the folks that I went through Leadership Belleville with. It's wonderful because you can call on them when you need resources, and they can reciprocate and call on you also for resources. But the chairperson's role, it's an interesting role, and I know each person's probably different. My experience, obviously, I know a lot of people might want to know, what do you do as a chairperson? So you do run the board meetings, the full board meetings and the executive committee meetings, and you're also a resource for the chamber staff, for Wendy. And with my financial background, I could also give her some financial guidance as well. So I would review the financial statements and things of that nature. Back when I started on the committee, also we were heading into that time frame when the pandemic was probably at its worst, and there were a lot of things going on. A lot of businesses were struggling. The chamber was a really good resource, I think, for the businesses in our area. And I know we were able to get a loan for the chamber from the federal government. I know a lot of the businesses did too. So there was a lot going on. We had to do things differently. It was hard to know where things were going. And that was not just our organization, but any business, and what that was going to look like into the future. So I think that we navigated those waters pretty well. And I think the chamber was very strong during that period. And I was happy to kind of be a part of that while that was going on.
Yeah, I mean, how, you were chair there kind of as, I guess, really people were getting more out. Restaurants were starting to opening up. Chamber events were starting to happen again. So, like you said, the involvement was everyone pretty much on board? Was everybody willing to help out with funneling those calls? Because I'm sure a lot of different locations, businesses were probably seeking for advice and help from you guys and guidance. So, what kind of team involvement was there with the chamber?
Well, I know Wendy was always in touch with, of course, all of our government representatives and senators at a state level. But also the health departments were very involved. We were getting guidance from some of the local hospitals as well. Each business had to make their own individual decisions. I know, for some organizations like ours, we ended up mandating the vaccine for our employees. And it just was a really difficult time, for everyone. But I think the chamber did a great job of bringing in people to speak. I don't know if you probably recall, there were a lot of webinars on different topics. Some was health related, others, how to get loans, maybe how to get grant money, all of those types of things to try to help our businesses out during that struggle.
Yeah, I think, a chamber alone wasn't alone there, right? Every organization was trying to figure out ways to bring value to their members. I feel like the chamber and other chambers as well too, I'm sure, kind of had a little more burden on them because regards to the business aspect and helping them try to navigate it a little bit more. And I do think how Wendy and everybody at the chamber did navigate it, I think it was outstanding. I think it was a tough situation to be put in. But even on your level, you had not only your organization that you had to worry about, but now you had the chamber to worry about as well too. So for you, it's kind of like a double-edged sword.
It was. We had a lot of struggles being in healthcare ourselves. And, just the constant worries, worrying about employees, worrying about the business model, worrying what's happened in our communities, what about the other businesses in our area? Just, there were a lot of things to consider. And I think Wendy's team, that was one thing. If I took anything away from my role as chairperson, it was just the amazing job that Wendy and her team do with the size of our chamber. The Greater Belleville Chamber is one of the largest chambers, and to have it operate so smoothly and all the things that they accomplish and get done, in a week's time is just amazing. It really, truly is amazing. I mean, they earn every dollar of their salary.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you say that. I just chaired a conference that we just had down in New Orleans, and I was just the chairperson for it, right? I didn't do the heavy lifting, through an organization that we're involved with. They did all the heavy lifting. They did the scouting of the locations. They did the, pre-conference setup, or post-conference teardown, all this stuff. It was just more of, we were there to kind of guide it a little bit. And I tell everybody, that people will come up and say, oh, you did a great job. And I go, don't thank me. It's these people, we're just kind of guiding the ship, if you will. They're the true captains of the ship. And I kind of feel that's, Wendy's role as well too. And I think she's doing an outstanding job with it. She's taken over. But again, I think it's the boards and the executive committee's role to kind of just navigate it, if you will, and have the captain run it successfully on their own. And like I said, I think she's put together a good board. There's a good board on there, and leadership at the top has always been exceptional there.
Yeah, I think, Amy, you kind of mentioned it too, and I think it's key for members because COVID did happen. A lot of people were struggling, and I think you get it all the time when your chamber members are, your dues are due and coming up for annual renewal and this and that. And, probably some people look at that bill and like, gosh, I got to pay this, or it's just a formality. I'm renewing for a year because I'm in Belleville. But I don't think people realize when you do need their assistance or need their help or how much the chamber gets involved. As you said, Greater Belleville, is one of the biggest ones around this area. They handle a lot of things. So, when people are questioning, what they're paying for, reach out to Wendy and the group and the chair and the board and figure out how they can help, because that's what they're there for. And I'm sure a lot of people, when the time came and they needed that assistance and got it, it was probably a quick reminder on why they are all a part of the chamber too.
Exactly. And there were a lot of people that did reach out, during that time. And fortunately, we had resources to help most of those folks.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it's also, you get what you put in, right? With the chamber. And again, that just showed people in the past might not have thought about it reaching out before, but they're in a situation where there's maybe a dire need, if you will, and they reached out, and now their perspective on it is changed maybe than it was pre-COVID. So with that being said, I kind of want to talk a little bit about, with you being in the executive, I mean, let me ask you that. Was that ever something that you planned on? I know you said Wendy reached out to you and I know who the person was that you were filling, because that was actually my accountant who ended up moving as well. But I mean, was that something you ever expect to go down on the executive path?
I thought about getting back on the chamber. As I mentioned, I kind of went off briefly for a while. I could have served an additional 3-year term, but I had already made a commitment years earlier to this other organization. And so I did want to get back on the chamber board. So I was happy to do that. And especially in the treasurer role, because that was a natural fit for me.
Yeah.
I question a lot of things. Wendy's probably glad I'm not the treasurer anymore.
Yeah, but that's that's the job of it, right? And that's what you're there for.
In me. It's
right.
A natural reaction, but yeah, the chamber's financials are great. So yeah.
They are. Well, with you being on the executive committee and now still being on it as the past chair, how has that experience benefited, not just you personally, but the Hospice of Southern Illinois as well?
Well, I think from a personal standpoint and a work standpoint, just the business connections that I've made, and I've continued to do that even since leadership Belleville, but being on the chamber board and being kind of in the know with a lot more detail of what's going on in the communities, and that helps too. But to also know who I can connect with. I mean, just as an example, probably over the last month, I've connected with 2 other chamber members and another chamber board member. We were looking to bring in a consultant for some DEI training and just some financial investment ideas and options, and we're able to connect with those people. So it's just a kind of a natural progression of networking taking it to a new level, I guess, a higher level. So it's been helpful for our organization as well, because a lot of our referrals come from the community. Word of mouth is huge. And, our organization's been in business for 42 years. It'll be in a couple months here. And so we're well established in our community. And for me to serve on the board and the executive committee, I think has been more opening more about our organization. I can speak about our organization in different meetings and things that come up. And a lot of times there's a connection that we can make there.
Now, are you anybody below you, I guess, in maybe the new CFO or anybody of that nature in a different role, are you kind of urging them the kind of same way that, you were kind of urged to get involved with the chamber? Have you pushed them to do that?
Absolutely. When I'm finished with my term on the board, I had recommended to both my CFO and our chief clinical officer to get involved in the chamber, one in the Belleville chamber, also another individual's up in the O'Fallon, Troy area as well. So I'm hoping that we will continue to have representation from our organization on the chamber board in going into the future. We do have other employees from our organization who do serve on other committees. I also serve on the healthcare committee right now, as well as my community education director. So we always try to be involved. We always stay involved in the chamber and all of its activities and support them.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too. Well, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off here, but I think a lot of these, a lot of people sometimes get, I don't know, say scared to apply for a position, but they might think, oh, they know people that are doing it. But in reality, there's usually a need there for somebody to apply, and they need people on those boards. or those committees, I should say. So, I've talked to people before that have made that comment that, well, they probably, I probably won't get selected. Well, you'd be surprised more times than not. That especially after COVID, I think it made people realize that being on those committees and whatnot are very valuable resource.
Amy, I was just gonna ask. You said you kind of open it up. Do you guys try to do you open it up to pretty much anyone with hospice that is willing to go out and join a committee, or do you guys try to kind of pinpoint it to maybe individuals that you see growing within hospice, kind of as a benefit type of deal? How do you guys kind of have that conversation?
We've always been very supportive of leadership Belleville, and most, if not, there might have been a year or two that we didn't participate, but probably in the last 15 years, 13 out of those years, we've always sent a candidate to be on leadership Belleville. And we always encourage those folks that have gone through that program then to be involved with the committee. So, we've always strongly encouraged that.
And then with that participation, Stephen's been through I'm the Lone Ranger here. I have not gone through leadership Belleville, but with your employees, with other companies, businesses that are maybe on the fence of sending one of their people there, what kind of growth have you seen? I know, you mentioned prior getting on here that, maybe you were more of the reserve type of individual. Did that help you kind of grow out of your shell, or do you see that type of, growth in your employees as well that go through it?
Mm-hmm. I would say they gain additional leadership skills. And even if you have leadership skills already, there's always something more to learn. And I think the relationships, are the most important things that you develop in leadership Belleville, and just an awareness of your community and what all the different players are, who they are. And I think you just grow it's professional growth, no matter what level you are. But I am an introvert, so I mentioned that to Eric before we started the conversation, but I had to learn a long time ago to be an extrovert. So I'm an introvert pretending to be an extrovert. So I had
you do a good job at it.
You're doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah. But I on that note, though, I think that kind of goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier, right? It's when you do something outside of your comfort zone, it's extremely rewarding, when you do it. And, there are people maybe in the same situation that are maybe introverts and don't feel like a committee or joining something of that is up their alley. You're proof that it can be, and it can help you grow personally, and also help your organization grow as well too. So I think anybody that's thinking that should just be honest, look at Amy and see how she's been able to use it and benefit herself and her organization. So again, kudos to you on that.
Thank you.
Well, hey, look, we know you're a very, very busy lady here, so we don't want to take up too much of your time. If there is any way anybody wants to get in touch with you or somebody at the organization is that possible? Is there an easy way to do that?
Sure. You can call Hospice of Southern Illinois and ask for me. I do take my own phone calls. I do have an assistant, but I answer my phone regularly. You can also email me at arichter, Richter, @hospice.org.
Thank you once again. We truly appreciate you coming in on sharing some insights on your time on the executive board for the chamber.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Amy.
Oh, shoot.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Growing Belleville Through Community Chats podcast. Please remember to follow and subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends and community leaders. For additional information from this podcast, please reach out to the Greater Belleville Chamber of Commerce.